In this movie, we'll take a look at Rails number helpers. We won't spend a lot of time on these because I think they're pretty straightforward, but they can be extremely useful. There are 6 main helpers that help you to format numbers for display, and I've arranged them in roughly the order that I think you're going to use them. Number to currency, number to percentage, number with precision, number with delimiter, number to human size, and number to phone. Notice that number with precision and number with delimiter have with as the second word, not to. All 6 of these helper methods take a number as their first argument and a hash of options as their second argument. You only need to pass in a hash of options if you want to override Rails defaults. I've listed off what options you can pass in for each one. For most of them, the delimiter is going to default to being a comma. That would be like the thousands separator, so 1, 000. The separator character by default will typically be the period. The default precision varies slightly between the different methods, but it's usually either 2 or 3. We'll take a closer look at number to currency in a moment. Number to percentage, of course, just takes a number and formats it into a percentage. Number with precision decides how many decimal places we want to show. It's slightly different from rounding because, for example, if we have the number 1000 with the precision of 3, then we'll get back 1000.000. Those extra zeros will still exist in our formatted number, whereas if we were simply rounding, they wouldn't. Number with delimiter just takes care of putting the thousands separator in the number. Number to human size might not be obvious what it does. Where this is really useful is when we're looking at file sizes. We pass in the number of bytes as the first argument. That's what the number is the number of bytes. And it returns to us a human readable representation of either the kilobytes, the megabytes, the gigabytes, or the terabytes, and so on. So for example, if we passed in 1024, we'd get back 1 KB as a response. If we put in 2048, we'd get back 2 KB. A little more than a million bytes would be 1 megabyte. So we get 1 MB back. And the last one you really don't use very often at all, but it takes a number and formats it to look like a phone number. The delimiter in this case is typically a dash. We can also specify what country code we want, whether we want the area code to be formatted in a special way. We can pass in true or false for that, whether we also want to add a telephone extension to the end. As I said, I think these are all pretty straightforward and you can play around with them as needed. I'll just show you a quick example with number to currency just to make sure that it's clear. So first I just have a default use of it. So we have number to currency, and the number that I pass in is 34.5. So it takes that number, which is an integer, and what it returns is a string, which is $34.50. In the second example, I've done the same thing, but I've provided some of those options in the option hash. I've said that the precision ought to be 0, so it'll do some rounding to make sure that we have no decimal places. I said that the unit ought to be KR. Several Scandinavian countries use krona with that abbreviation for their currency. And I've said that the format ought to be flipped around. %n space %u. That's for number and unit. The default is to have it the other way around. %u, %n, which would give us the $ in front of the number. So that's really all there is to it. Like I said, they're pretty straightforward, but if you were to try and actually write things that would do this for yourself, it would be a real headache. So it's really great that Rails makes it so easy for us, and we just have to call these helper methods.